All right. Well, welcome everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Heather Hankemer, and I am the program director for the Revenue Growth Company. And I'm really excited to be serving as your Zoom host for today. And the way we're going to do this is if you have any questions as Kent is going through his materials or as Mindy is answering questions, please pop your questions over there in the chat and I will make sure that they get answered as we move along. We will be making this available to everyone when we are done, and we also have some resources that we want to share with you. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to our new webinar series, Accelerating Revenue Growth and Business Success. And the topic today is the roadmap to business success and where do you start to actually create business wealth. Our speakers help thousands of organizations in dozens of countries to generate millions to billions of dollars in new sales and revenue. And in many cases, without hiring more salespeople or spending any more money on marketing. This has allowed many business owners, entrepreneurs, and employees to become millionaires and multimillionaires. International expert at no-cost growth and optimizing business success. Help me welcome Kent Billingsley. And if everyone could turn themselves on mute, that would be amazing.
Heather, thank you. I appreciate it, and welcome everybody. And you know what? I'm excited now to do webinars. I've been doing them for the last few years during COVID, but I'm really excited about launching this one. Let me walk you through the agenda of what we're going to cover because we're going to move pretty fast. This is a lot of content. The agenda of what we're going to go through today is talking about creating business wealth, which is very different than growing and trying to scale a business. We're going to talk about what's the roadmap versus what's the path to business. And it starts with this genesis of a fundamental marketplace problem, or what I call an FMP as I describe it in the book. And I'm going to talk through that and unpackage that and talk through some examples and things. And then we're very fortunate. We have a guest client today with us, Mindy Jones. She's founding partner of Pyxis Care Management. She's been in the process for several months now, transitioning from being on a path of trying to grow her business to now learning how to create wealth with her business based on a very powerful and compelling value proposition. At the end, with a few minutes to go, I'll answer some questions as I can. We'll talk about some action stops. At 3:45, I want to do a hard stop. At that point, you go back to your day job or go back to whatever you want to do. If you do want to stick around, I'll share with you the different kinds of free resources that we have. I'll talk about additional resources you can get access to, and then some of the public programs that are coming up, other events we're doing with partners out there and such. And then also what's our latest promotion? What are we offering to help people learn how to create business wealth as opposed to grinding and slaving and fighting and all that kind of stuff that's going on. So anyway, let me jump right into the content. If you have a question, put it in the chat. And because we have so little time, I'm going to move really fast through the content. And let me pull up the first screen. So let me share this real quick if we've done this properly. Just a quick show of hands. Could everybody see this graph called business growth? Does that show? Okay, good. All right. I want to give you a little bit of background. I started doing this work about 25 years ago, 2.5 decades. I know I started when I was 10, but actually 2.5 decades back, 1995-ish. Started working inside companies and learning how to not grow them faster, grow them bigger or better, but actually how to optimize. Optimizing means how do you actually generate more sales, revenue, and profits using the fewest resources necessary. So a good way to unpack that definition is maximum results, minimum effort. And I started doing it back then, and then in 2002, I started my own firm and started working with companies, started sponsoring entrepreneurial groups and things like that. And it was interesting. I kept seeing the same graph everywhere I went. And now some of the graphs, especially the last couple of years, if you can see my cursor, the revenues were actually going down. This might have been the COVID years are in here. Companies took some serious dips, but overall, if I overlaid about 500,000 companies on top of each other, they kind of look like this. Here's the revenue line going through here. And then Here's the expense line, almost trailing or tracking with it. Now, sometimes the expense line goes above the revenue line, but that little green river in there is profit. That little green river is what's left over. That's the money that's made in very generic terms. This is a business growth path. I can't make this interactive because I've got to move so fast, but this is what I've seen all over the world. And it's been fascinating because basically what it's saying is we are using a lot of expense money, sales, marketing, hiring, all kinds of things to try to get this top line higher. And basically that comes down to most companies are actually buying growth. They're not investing, they're actually spending. They're burning and wasting a lot of money to try to get that top line. And people would argue, well, what's wrong with that, Kent? That's the way business is done. That's how it happens. Well, if you accept that and you're okay with that, then we can stop here and you can go back to your day job. If you're not happy with that, you're saying the same question I had, or I was actually asked to go figure out is how do we get this top line higher? And how do we get this line down here, the expense line, lower? Because that gap in here, that gap is the amount of money that the company makes. And whether it's the company it makes just to reinvest or the company it makes to keep or the money it makes to give back, that little bit of area right there is really the success of the business. Too many people, too many leaders, and even the marketplace measure the success of the business by how fast it grows. And there are a lot of companies, and I get the phone call to come in and pull them out of the ditch because they've grown really fast, but the firm doesn't make any money. And in some cases, it's actually losing money. And so that's a model that's accepted, but I don't think we have to accept it. And so let me move here to this next slide. And so here's kind of the lay of the land, is that the good news is on this business growth path is your business is bigger. Might be better, and you might have made some profit. That's this line here, but there's so many flaws. You've got, as you add things, you add more clients, you add more customers, you add more employees, you add more locations, you add more products and services. What you find in many of you that are CEOs or running companies, as you add a good thing, you typically add a bad thing. You add more headaches, more issues, more turnover, more layers of management, more bureaucracy. And so there's a lot of bad news over here that takes place. The other thing that's really important that you have to look at is this line down here. So we typically look at the profit and revenue line, top line, bottom line, but the other line that's really critical is this time. How long does it take to get here? And this is the one thing that you should be concerned about, you should worry about and think about is what is the speed to revenue, not necessarily how much revenue. And so my point down here, and if I could sum this up, is that the companies I talk with, work with, even last week in another city in Texas, they're really good at what they do. They really have the passion, they care. They offer exemplary products and services. So they're good at what they do. They're great at what they do, but they're not great at making money doing what they do. And that's the thing we want to fix. That's the thing we want to change. And so I come down here and I say, what we have to learn to do is get off the path that everyone else is on and get on a roadmap that actually doesn't build a bigger business, but actually creates business wealth. All right, let me go to the next slide because I want to show you the difference here that's really important. All right, in this slide, so I've got those original lines that I had on the last slide. Here's the revenue and here's the profit and here's what you make. When you change your path and when you start not focusing on growing the business, running the business, scaling the business, but when you start to focus on how can my business not trade products, services, and time for dollars, but how could my business actually leverage the value of what we actually do? In other words, and I'll say it this way, and I actually own the trademark, monetize the value. How do we monetize the impact, the results, the net benefits of what we do and turn that into as much money as fast as possible? That's creating business wealth. And so if you look over here, here's this same revenue line. And as you've read the book, and I hope you've got the book and you're learning from the book and applying the book, as you've learned from my book, there's lots and lots and lots of case studies of companies. There's one that started one of the chapters. It took them, I think 4 or 5 years to get to $5 million. And then from one meeting, we signed a $5.7 million contract. And so now all of a sudden they're experiencing that explosive growth. The beautiful thing behind this is this area down in here, because they didn't need 20 salespeople and 20 times 8 categories of cost, they actually were able to save all of this money down here, which creates business wealth. But the other thing is the speed. Instead of waiting another 5 years or however many years to get here, they were able to compress that back to here. And that's this time factor that's so important. So as you're thinking about your business, trying to grow your business, you got to think of, you know what, at what point, how fast could I get to that top revenue line? How fast could I double or triple the revenue, the sales, or the profits? Now, the other side that's interesting is down here as we look at the expense line, and it's much lower. And this simple graph that you know, almost looks like it was done with chalk. The simple graph shows almost a 2/3 reduction in expenses. And I'll tell you where that comes from. And you've got the data points and the research from companies all over the world. About 2/3 of what is spent in sales and marketing is a complete waste of time, money, and resources. Sadly, a lot of that money is actually used to erode the brand equity. Sales calls that turn the prospect off, marketing literature that confuses the marketplace, messaging that's so mushy that now the prospect's confused. Those dollars being spent actually start to slow down, sometimes down in here, slow down the growth line, even though the money's been spent. That's one that's really hard for a lot of business leaders to wrap their head around is, wait a minute, I'm spending all this money on sales and marketing and social media, then my business should be growing. It is, but you don't understand maybe the damage that you're doing to your brand. You don't understand the confusion that you're causing with your prospects. And you don't understand how you're mispositioning. And that was a big issue last week down in San Antonio. This organization, phenomenal at what they do, but they were actually, some of their language in their mission statement, you ready for this? In their mission statement, they were using what are called negative words, or instead of power words, they were using words that positioned them into the wrong space. That was in their mission statement. And so we see that a lot out there, and that's language that they felt good about, spent a lot of money and time putting together, didn't realize that the negative language was affecting their brand. So we look down here and we say, wow, we can get this phenomenal top line, and we can use a lot less money, sometimes less or more. I never want to be that chainsaw Al that goes into a company and fires 1/3 of the salespeople, or I eliminate half the marketing. What I really look at is, how do we take what we've got, the head count, the dollars, the spend, how do we change it so we get so much more upside, so we can flatten this line down here. Now, here's another interesting phenomenon of what I see is the money that's misspent on the sales and marketing side, or misallocated or used improperly, affects the support and delivery side. In other words, if we got salespeople running around out there with their heads cut off, bringing in bad deals, who pays the price for bad deals? It's the operations, it's delivery, it's support. So now all of a sudden their costs start to go up. Sales is over here, made their number, got their commissions, they're all happy. But now the operations and delivery people are over here going, oh my God, we can't take another bad customer like that. We can't take another client who has expectations we can't meet. So now it's interesting how both sides of the equation, the sales and revenue side, dramatically impact or negatively impact the operations and support side. So the key here is, if you see now all this green, all of this here is business wealth. So what's important, or what's the value behind business wealth? Well, the first thing is, you can get out of the ditch that 98% of all companies are in and leaders struggle with, and that's cash problems. Too many companies, most companies, have all kinds of cash struggles. They don't have enough cash on hand. Their cash flow is inconsistent. They have little to no working capital, or on the backside, their receivables are becoming very latent. In some clients, sadly, one of the fastest growing departments, if you're ready for this, is collections. They're adding people to their team to go get the money that was already owed to them. How sad is that? I see some of you laughing. That's the truth. If you spend a day with me and go inside these companies, you find them that they're having to track down and go get the money that's owed to them that they've already spent the resources to earn. And it's becoming worse. It's not getting better. And then we throw in the COVID times. Now we got inflation, the supply chain. But what's important to creating business wealth is you take so much risk out of your business. Time is not necessarily good for business. Time is not good for deals because time means risk. More things can happen, more things can fall apart, deals can go away, prospects can drop out, customers can close their business. So time is a very dangerous thing to a company. So the faster you can do good things, the better off you are. The other side of this is now with this excess money, you can better compensate and reward employees. You can create comp packages that your competitors can't offer. You can pay back your investors faster. Really big thing. This was pre-COVID. So many of my clients are saying, hey, Kent, I want to make a lot more money because I want to give a lot more back to society, community, the charitable institutions. We haven't been able to do that like we used to. Can you help us do that? And that's a big issue there. But then the key is you can do that and you can always give money away. But if you don't have it, all of a sudden now you don't have the money to reinvest. You don't have the money to attract and retain. You don't have the money to advance your products and services. But now you do all those things and now you've got extra cash in the bank. The title behind Entrepreneur to Millionaire was how fast can I help entrepreneurs become millionaires, which includes their employees, which includes their stakeholders, which includes their investors. How fast can we give money back? And so this is a different path. This is creating business wealth. This is what I call the E2M roadmap to get you here as fast as possible. And here's the most important, real quick, bad news. You are going to have to think differently. This is not easy, as Mindy's going to share in just a little bit. This is really challenging. It's not easy. I've made it simple, but you're going to have to do a different kind of work. And I'll let her explain that in just a little bit. But the thing that I hope you own and take with you that is, if this sounds too good to be true, as you read through my book, you'll learn and understand. And I know many of you out there read my book several times, looking at you as we've discussed. You're going to read lots of case studies, lots of examples how this actually plays out. But more importantly is you don't need any more resources. You don't need to really hire more people. You don't need to spend more time on social media. Literally every company has so much untapped potential, whether you're an employee or a leader, to create more wealth, to reinvest back in the firm, to give back to society, and to compensate yourself or reward yourself. That's why down here at this point, creating business wealth does not require any more time, money, or resources. You have enough. It's there. You don't have to grind any harder. You don't have to work any harder, but you do have to work differently. And with that set up, now I want to talk about what our topic is today. I want to talk about this, the chapter in the book called The Genesis of Your Business, the FMP. And that stands for Fundamental Marketplace Problem. And the FMP, and this is interesting, as I've been going into side companies for 25 years, one of the core questions that I would ask clients and even prospects before they joined a program was, why do you exist? And why should anyone care? You would not believe how many executive teams, you would not believe how many organizations can't answer that question. You would not believe how many executives are confused. And sadly, these are not your startups. These are not your $10 million companies. I've had this occur in billion-dollar firms, that the executives and the leaders couldn't really explain their reason for being. And so with them, we had to go back into the phase that I call revenue ready. And revenue ready is where you set in place the first step on the roadmap to understand not what you're doing on the inside, but what's going on the outside. Because most of the questions you're trying to answer about your business, most of the dilemmas and confusion about your business, the answers are on the outside. Your prospects will tell you, your clients will tell you. But for some reason, at some point in time in a company, the first year or the third year or the fifth year, or we've reached 10 million, we stop asking, we stop listening. And so you've got to go back out. And I take the teams through this process to go back out and say, let's talk about the marketplace. Let's talk about the opportunity or the gap. And a fundamental marketplace problem is basically this. It's a gap or it's an opportunity somewhere in the marketplace where the market, the people, the prospects, the buyers are being underserved or they're not getting what they want. And that could be anything from a service or a product or something where their expectations are here and what they're getting is down here. The interesting thing about the FMP is, and as you read through my book, I give you lots of examples. FMPs can evolve. The FMP you started with for your business might not be there anymore. Or in the case of Apple, their FMP was figuring out, how do we make technology fun? Are you ready for this? Back in 1976. Some of you may not even have been born yet. In 1976, they were talking about how do we make technology fun, because it was boring, confusing, and scary, or nerdy. And that's still true today. Apple is still one of the leaders in making technology fun and making it funner. So your FMP is fundamental marketplace problem. It can evolve, but it should be the foundation of your business, and it should be the reason for being and why someone should care. So having said that, what I want to do, I want to introduce Mindy Jones. And Mindy is the founding partner at Pyxis Care Management. And she's had a very successful business with one model. And then she started another business service a couple of years ago. And then we met up a few months back, and then we've been working together, getting off the business growth path and the battle that takes, and getting onto the roadmap of how you create wealth. So with that introduction, Mindy, I just want to turn it over to you. And if you would, I'll maybe lead you a little bit with some questions. Share with the group anything, but what's that been like learning about and making the transition from trying to grow a business, start, run, and grow a business, to now going back from the beginning and revenue ready and starting to learn how about an FMP?
Well, first, let me say thank you, Kent, for having me and giving me to speak. It's not always something I'm looking forward to do, is share with everybody in the world all the things I don't do well.
Yeah.
But this is a venue for me to be able to hopefully help the entrepreneurial community a little bit. So happy to answer the question. You asked me 3 different things in one question, like you normally do. So I'm going to try to break it down.
Yes, please.
What we were trying to do in delivering what I think is an incredibly needed, valuable, awesome service was hitting our heads against a wall, trying to message that out to the business community. And so the process of working with you and going back to determining our FMP was really refreshing, because I couldn't understand why what I was doing wasn't making sense and wasn't being absorbed by our potential customers that were out there. It was very frustrating. So trying something different and getting to a methodical approach and a breakdown of how to systematize what we were doing was refreshing, was helpful.
Talk to the group about learning about what an FMP is, and then learning how to frame. And it's interesting here working with Mindy. And I got to tell you guys, Mindy's sharp. She's aggressive, she's entrepreneurial, she's everything I talk about in the book. I mean, she's got all the attributes, traits, and characteristics to be absolutely successful. But if you're on the wrong path, you can kill yourself and maybe never get there. To share with the group what it was like to actually frame and get our arms around, because we had to get the right angle on the FMP. And it was several iterations to where now it's absolutely compelling. Share a little bit of experience going through that.
Well, I think one of the things that was difficult for me was we're in the healthcare space, and healthcare, just by its nature, is already a series of complex systems. And so trying to find language to communicate what we did and simplify it without dumbing it down was difficult. It was a journey. We've been in the care management space, like Kent said, since 2010. It's not a new place for us, but talking to a new channel of customers means you have to be in the buyer's mind and use words that they understand and where they can relate. And finding out what those things were, it did take several painful conversations to try to keep dialing back and dialing back and dialing back to get to that common nugget where I can say, you're in a situation where costs are going up and health is declining, and it's 5 words, but to get to that took a long, long time.
Yeah, and to talk through kind of the evolution, when we first met and talked, she goes, one of the great challenges we have in healthcare, and you guys all have this in a different way, is getting positioned over with HR. And whether you've ever called on a company that when you get positioned to HR, that's kind of like jail or prison. I mean, they don't let you out and they don't buy from you and they don't want to feed you. I mean, it's really, really kind of an ugly place. But everybody struggles in different companies with getting positioned in the wrong organization, the wrong department, talking to the wrong person. And what was interesting, where it looked like her FMP was kind of an HR issue. It was, reducing the cost of healthcare. As we worked and reframed the FMP, we could elevate it up to where it was now a profit issue, not a cost issue. And so instead of HR going, wow, how do we manage the overall cost, and how do we do the death march to the CEO to say, yeah, costs went up 15% again this year, and there's nothing we can do about it. And they had all these games. I mean, they could switch carriers and they could play games and all that. But they actually, over time, as Mindy learned how to frame it as a profit issue, and how it was chewing up the bottom line for the company. Now, why is that important? Because when you frame the FMP properly, it can get you positioned. Now her value proposition and now her ability to message was squarely on the CEO desk and the CFO. So now it was elevated into the C-suite. And over time, another thing that she picked up, and I hope some of you do too, is as we work to frame and understand the FMP, we were actually able to find 2 angles of it. And if you're in a company now, you've probably been affected by the increasing healthcare costs, because sometimes they pass it on to you, or they lower your benefits, or they play all these games. What Mindy and I discovered as we went through, and her team, was that not only is her model actually now lower the cost and improve profits, but the other side of this is it actually improves the health of the employees. So that wasn't in the original framing. It was more like, how do we put the brakes on runaway healthcare costs, which is a very powerful value proposition. But now we can say, my gosh, CEO, how interested are you in increasing your profits and having your employees be healthier? That not only is that a phenomenal value proposition, it's a great filter, because if somebody doesn't want their employees healthier, I told Mindy, get in your car and leave skid marks. You don't want to talk or work with those folks. Run away. And that's the power in messaging and marketing, as we both attract and filter. But it all starts back with the FMP, is how do you frame the problem? Because there's other companies, and maybe even some people on the call, I can't see everybody now, but they might work for a brokerage service, or they might work for a carrier, or they might work for somebody else, and they might have a different framing, which there's nothing wrong with that. And as you read my book, you'll learn all the different ways that the pizza companies frame the problem to get an angle to where they can drive top line and not have to chew up all their bottom line to get there. Let's talk, Mindy, for a second. How is this different or harder than what you were doing before? Because I don't want to mislead anybody to just say, hey, you're gonna get my book and here's your tips and tricks, because I own some of these books where it's the 4-day work week and live on a hammock and drink coconut with lime in it all day, and you're going to be a multimillionaire. There's all kinds of bestsellers and tens of thousands of reviews. I buy the book and I'm like, oh my God, this is not applicable. Share with us how hard this is and difficult, and now how it's getting you in position for success.
Well, so several things. I think doing it this way, in a sense, is harder because I'm having to break old habits and learn new ones, and that's always a challenge. But it's still the same work of being able to gather an audience, or somebody who can receive the message, make sure that you're getting good back and forth communication and understanding, and then delivering a value proposition. The thing that's been so impactful for me is having the system break down not break down, fall apart, break down, break it into pieces where I can
Yeah.
see how do these components all work together so that I feel like I'm working smarter, not harder, even though learning the new way is not always easy. So I like to be productive. I like to be efficient. And like you said earlier, there's not any more hours in the day. So I have to be able to do more with less. And this is a way that I'm seeing that happen, but it's not easy to change old habits. So
Yeah.
I'm committed to it, but I will say that there's a getting off the treadmill feeling that it takes a little bit to get your sea legs.
What about being counterintuitive? What about being like, oh my God, that's radically different? Because we've had a lot of ahas in our meetings about, yeah, but I've been taught to do it this way. I've been taught to say it this way. I've been taught. What about some ahas or counterintuitives or myth shattering that we've talked to? Can you think of
Well,
any of
I
those
think
things?
I think the getting the FMP frames so that you're starting on common ground with what is the problem
Yeah.
was a real big step. And then learning how to communicate effectively so you're staying in the right zone of being the expert, and not being a vendor or being salesy or being a professor or what have you, going through that process as far as a sales strategy has been very, very helpful. That's been a big aha. And I would say trying to learn how you're always showing value and not just closing deals, I think has been probably a big aha for me.
Yeah, good. And she brought up actually one of the modules that we work through in the group, and that's learning how not to be a vendor. And I call this, I've coined this as Vendorville. And Vendorville is where the salespeople, your marketing, they're counting on things such as your price, your product, your proposal, or worse of all, the salespeople, their personality. Ugh. I call those the 4 Ps, and that's how you get peed on. And it's not scalable. It's scary that it would even be repeatable, but we really talk about not leading with who you are, what you do, but leading with, well, what's broken in the marketplace that we can mutually agree upon. And in this case, the CEO going, I am really sick and tired of every year having to increase what I pay the carriers or for healthcare 10%, 15%, and knowing there's not much I can do about it. And I can spread the costs, or I can lower the benefits, or I can have the employees pay more, but none of those solutions. And it's interesting how the FMP just leaves the CEO and the buyer, the CFO, and even the HR person, it leaves them in a very negative emotional construct. And Mindy's been awesome at learning how to connect on that level and say, before we talk about products and services, let's talk about what's broken and how you feel about it. And it's very powerful. And this is something I'll share with you that I learned as a speaker, that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's fascinating how good Mindy is now. She leads with in her elevator pitch. She leads with her messaging. She leads with her, we're working on a 1-pager right now. We lead with, here's what's broken in the marketplace, FMP, and here's why it's broken, and more importantly, why it hasn't been fixed. And now all of a sudden, Mindy is an expert in understanding where the buyer is, not trying to get the buyer to go somewhere else, but to understand where the buyer is and why they're stuck and why they're frustrated and why they're having the emotions that they have, as opposed to the good emotions they could. And now with that, and this is really important, with a few minutes I've got left, I want to share with you how important the FMP is. If you'll think of it as a metaphor, most people are building a 1, 2, 3-story home thinking they can add another story to it as their business. And yet it's the foundation. Your FMP is your foundation to your skyscraper. It's got to be wider, it's got to be deeper, it's got to be stronger, like the roots of a tree, double metaphor, okay? But if you want to have 20, 30, 40 floors, I was just down in San Antonio on the 30th floor looking down on the Alamo. That was so cool. But you can imagine what kind of foundation. Well, there were like 5 parking levels underground to allow you to build that skyscraper, that massive business, or that incredible revenue flow. And it takes that FMP then to set up and give you the right perspective on the model that then you can deliver and satisfy the problem within that marketplace. And so we've done a lot of work talking with Mindy about, okay, now that we've framed the FMP, what's the right model? We just made some changes just a couple of weeks ago in the model to be a little more expansive to who we target, how to deliver things a little bit differently. Constantly working, and this is really important, constantly working to make sure we stay on point, to calibrate, is the model delivering on the problem in the marketplace? And then from there, and we've talked to it, and she's now in the second phase, which is market ready, and now we're jumping into the third phase, which is go to market. But she's now worked hard on the targeting, the packaging, the messaging, and all those other things. And what's critical is, and she knows, and I want you guys to learn, is those are all branches off of the marketplace problem. If you don't have clarity, and if you haven't framed the marketplace problem properly, the FMP, then any message will do, any model might make you $1, any revenue stream might bring in some money. But that's high risk, that's hope, that's luck, all those things that don't build repeatable, high quality businesses that create business wealth. Other comments, thoughts, Mindy, as you're going through this process? And it's I've had a lot of people tell me, they go, Kent, this was harder than starting my darn business. My business was hard starting it, getting up and running. This is so much harder. And I said, yeah, because it's all mental. This is not physical. This is not how many calls you make. This is not how many people you knock down trying to get them to buy something. This is, as Sun Tzu would say, the military strategist from 2,500 years ago. He's quoted in the books and the translations to say, fight the fight in the mind before you fight the fight in the field. Ken Berger knows that quote. But this is how we have to do it. We have to think through things with clarity and with the right angle. Mindy, what's that been like going through that process mentally? You can't, don't say torture on TV, okay?
I'm not going to drop any F-bombs, don't worry. It's been sweaty in the brain. I'm used to working hard. I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm a very persistent, diligent person, but this is not that same kind of work. It's different. And so making sure that you take the time to plan, making sure that you take the time to think, and making sure that you're putting the strategy behind your system, it's just different muscles.
Yeah, and muscles you probably never used before. Muscles that it's like, I want you to, some of my free resources, my blogs, I talk about, one of them that I hope you'll read is, your strong work ethic is your curse. In other words, my willingness to put in long days and long hours and grind my people and sacrifice, and for guys never get a health checkup and all that kind of stuff. Where that's a virtue or an ethic, that's actually a curse, because in this process, getting off of one path and getting onto a different roadmap, it is all mental, it's all will, it's all desire. And it's interesting, a lot of times, like because Mindy spent a couple of years grinding it, she was mentally ready to say, there's got to be an easier way. There's got to be a better way. I'm so tired and frustrated of doing everything I've been told that's right, but not getting the results. And this head banging and this knocking ourselves to where whatever's coming out of our head. That's the aha that says something's wrong. What's wrong? And what's interesting is the world has changed. In the past, if we went back 20 years or 40 years, you could basically offer a product or service, and if you offered it, they will come. I call it the Field of Dreams philosophy. There are a couple other competitors. Today, there's 1,000 competitors. There are competitors saying they do what you do. There are competitors lying to get the business. There's the competitors that are using the famous entrepreneurial quote, fake it till we make it, or fake it till we sign it, and then we'll figure out afterwards. There's so much sleaziness and cheesiness in the market because people are desperate. People are in survival mode, just trying to make $1 that they'll say or do anything to get there. But here's what's fascinating is Mindy's value proposition and the ability to generate more profitability while actually improving the employee health. Anybody can say it, but nobody can back it up. That's a powerful, compelling value proposition. It's differentiating, it's separating, and it's motivating. Mindy, thank you for your comments and thoughts and sharing, because Mindy's kind of a private person. She doesn't like to share with the world and all that. And I kind of had to twist her arm and say, hey, I want you to be on here because you've really lived and experienced going through this process. Let's see, I didn't see a lot of questions, so I keep going on. It's 3:45. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna do a hard stop here. If you need to go and you want to go back to whatever you were doing and the business growth path you're on, that's fine. If you want to know about our free resources and how do you get on the path to a roadmap of creating business wealth, I want to share some things with you. First of all is our website. Let me see if I can share a screen to get to our.
So while Ken's doing that, Tom, did you have something you wanted to add in?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, I'm going to see if I got this. So you spent a lot of time rethinking something, but can you tell me briefly what your value proposition was and then what it became after you went through all this?
I'll stop sharing and then, yeah, go ahead, Mindy, if you want to.
So as Kent was saying, our value proposition in care management is that we help employees get healthier, which helps businesses be more successful. Okay.
That's what it is now.
That's what it is now.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What was it? What did it used to be?
We're healthcare consultants.
So you went from healthcare consultants to this, okay.
Yeah.
Those are dramatically different. I have no idea what healthcare consultant is.
Well, that's part of my problem. Is I hire registered nurses to not do clinical services. We don't take temperatures or pass medications or do that, but it's all care coordination and care navigation. And when you're not in the healthcare space, if I say care coordination and navigation, probably you have no idea what I'm talking about. So we had to put it in terms that made sense to the audience. And of course, I've been doing this for 12 years. I know exactly what I'm talking about. All the words make sense to me. But to have somebody like Kent to say, oh, that doesn't make sense to me at all, and work through, okay, how do we get to this, was where we were able to put the brakes on runaway healthcare costs and help companies be more successful by helping their employees be healthier. I mean, it's just going through all the phraseology to be able to convey
that all makes sense. I spent years telling people we have excellent customer service until about a few months ago, I realized what we are is we're the LMS administrators. And so if you're talking to somebody, that spoke volumes to them, where customer service, they didn't have any idea what that was. Well, that's interesting. I what you said there was much more precise and meaningful. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Absolutely.
And Tom, that's a great question, because originally there wasn't really a value proposition. It was more about, here's what we do.
Yeah,
Here's our
right.
product,
Yeah.
Here's our service. And we're taught to go tell that story as many times as it takes to get a customer.
Yeah.
That's from the more from more school of thought, which is a flawed philosophy. I come from, why don't we learn how to tell a compelling story that the buyer cares about first before they care about us?
Yeah. Well, we suffer from knowing too much.
Well, that are not leading with what's important to them.
Yeah.
And that was the work that we had to do, is to really say, you know what, nobody cares about us. They only care about what they're going to get from us. And we had to really grind through that. And those are grinding sessions and challenging, but it's interesting. And you can tell from Mindy is, just get tired of getting beat up and being out there and fighting. And we're doing this to our salespeople. We're doing this to our employees. We just grind them out and just say, go make 5 more calls, go get 10 more proposals out the doors, instead of coming back and saying, if the message isn't connecting, change the message or change the targeting. And if you change the targeting, change the message. But we're so reluctant to get away from last century's paradigms, and it's really hard. So let me share with you, I want to show you some free resources, if I can share my screen.
Well, thanks, Mindy.
Yeah, I'll go over here real quick. Okay, so first of all, our blogs over here, and I've got, I think, I can't remember, Heather, 42 articles that are out there. And these aren't blogs like, hey, here's how I was doing. I was in San Antonio all last week. It was really great. And I saw the Alamo. Who cares? Now, these are really business changing. Everything I write about, speak about, and provide workshops is about creating business wealth. Back to that original third slide. Okay, but I want to show you the blog I recommend you go read is this one right here. It's called Entrepreneur Success Myths Debunked. Focusing on growing your business is the smartest path to maximizing business success. A huge myth. Because trying to make a business, grow it, scale it, make it bigger, never generates the wealth that's possible. So I highly recommend that. Other free resources, we have a public event on April 21st. Heather can get you some information on that. And then real quick, for those of you who stayed around, we've got a promotion on our small group, executive small groups in a monthly format, similar to EO, YPO, Vistage, those kinds of firms, but they're more structured. There's content, more levels of accountability, more support levels. We follow this roadmap to creating wealth. And for certain companies, the 12-month structure is guaranteed. If you don't achieve the results, you get your money back. And Heather can share information about that. Reach out to her. So unless there's any more questions, all we wanted to do today was share with you about one of the principles and chapters in the book. This one was about the genesis of your company, the fundamental marketplace problem. I really want to thank Mindy for joining us and sharing. And she was like, I'm not sure I want to do that. But and I hope I get to invite others that are on the call today as we get this started and up and running, and have you guys share too, because I don't think there's anything more powerful than people that have experienced and are working through the change and the transformation. I could talk for days, but it's the Mindys of the world that are living it and going through it that can share with you. It's not easy. It's hard. But once you get these things built, and once like her messaging, once her one pager, her value proposition, it can be delivered 10,000 times and she never has to do it. But the build, the design, the getting those things in place takes a lot of work. So anyway, all right, with that having said, thank you all for joining us today. Really enjoyed it. We'll do this again in another month. We're going to talk about, I'm trying to decide here, either the 10 myths of business you must throw away, or we're going to go right into the next chapter, which is business modeling. I'll decide that in the next week or two. But join us then. Please share this. Reach out to Heather if you got questions or want to know anything else. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Kent. You're too good for words, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.